Hey, Chris Hoyt here, head of product at Vynyl. I'm here at ViVE in Los Angeles. We just wrapped a tech talk with Jon Zerden, the Chief Technology Officer of Rescription, a startup disrupting the PBM space and a long-standing partner of Vynyl's. We're super happy to have Jon today. Let's jump into that talk. All right, thanks everyone for joining. We don't have a ton of time, so I'm gonna jump right into it. I am Chris Hoyt, the head of product at a company called Vynyl, a product development firm. And I'm super excited to be joined today by Jon Zerden, the Chief Technology Officer of Rescription, a super disruptive startup playing in the PBM space. So Jon has over 25 years of experience in the healthcare and HIPAA compliance space. He has built scalable systems managing over 150 million transactions per day, including Athena Health, Salesforce, Zoom, and Allscripts. Jon was early to the study and implementation of AI solutions in healthcare, so before it was cool. And he has managed web properties scaled to 6 billion annualized visits. So thanks, Jon, for joining us. Very happy to have you here and talk about Rescription. Let's start with the big one. What is Rescription?
So Rescription, we think of ourselves as an anti-PBM or pharmacy benefit manager. So what does that really mean? We're a drop-in replacement product for a pharmacy benefit management program for self-insured employers. And so we do things a bit differently than most PBMs, and that really starts from our mission, which is around two things. One is savings for both the employer and the employee, and then the second is around the member experience. And so the three things we do different, the first is being a transparent PBM. That means lots of things to lots of different people. But really what we try to do is align our incentives with the employer and the employee. So it's about cost savings, not about spending more money and us making more money. It's about cost savings to the employer. The second thing that we spend a lot of time on is thinking about that member experience. Oftentimes, the first time you're aware that you even have a PBM is when you've been diagnosed with a new disease state. You go to get a prescription, maybe you look it up on the price on GoodRx or something along those lines, and you're wondering how you're going to afford it. And so we're trying to really reduce that friction. And we do that really in these three ways: the transparent PBM piece, and then we have a product and some proprietary IP that we call Rexy, and our Saver program, which allows us to identify the most expensive drugs coming across the wire, siphon those off, and renegotiate how we procure those for our members, reducing the price materially, and then there's the member experience. And so net, we end up saving employers 20 to 40% off their drug spend. So an average employer with, say, 5,000 employees will save $2 to $4 million annually to their bottom line.
So that's incredible. I want to double click on Rexy. I think that drives a ton of the disruptive value of Rescription. As Chief Technology Officer, can you talk a little bit about some of the architectural decisions that you made to power that capability?
Yeah, for sure. So Rexy's complicated, right? It's, we have to do claims adjudication, which everybody knows is incredibly complicated. We have to then do it in pharmacy, which is more complicated. And then we have to think about real-time pricing with rebates and all the other complexities that go in with pharma. And so we spent more than a year on architecture before we wrote the first line of code. And we really thought about the architecture from sort of three dimensions. The first is, I would have said it was table stakes, but with the Change Healthcare stuff, maybe that's too soon to talk about, but so less table stakes really, but it's really the protection of the data, right? We have very sensitive information on our members, and we need to make sure that that's protected. So a lot of thought went into that. The second is the real-time nature of the data. So we have over 25 sources that I need to analyze the data in real time, make real-time decisions, and that data's got to be accurate and clean, which we all know in healthcare landscape is a bit of a challenge. So a lot of thought went into that from an architecture perspective. And then the third thing is we're a mission critical app. We need to be able to fulfill prescriptions for our members 24/7. You go to the ER, 3 a.m., we need to be able to fulfill that. And so a lot of thought went into redundancy, uptime, supportability, and speed, even before we wrote the first line of code.
Very cool. Okay, so let's now talk a little bit more about the tech stack powering sort of the real-time data and the dynamic rerouting and pricing that you guys can offer. Can you touch on the tech stack?
Yeah, for sure. So I mentioned earlier, we have 25 real-time sources of data. So that's everything from rebate management to retail challenges related to pricing to availability. We have data from the EMRs in certain cases, but sort of this broad swath of data. And we need to act on it in real time, right? Again, if you go to my scenario earlier where you're diagnosed with a new disease state, it's a high sort of friction, high stress environment. We need to simplify that process for you. We need to make sure that you're supported, you can afford the medications that we're going to help you get, and we need to be able to do that in real time. And the analogy that we gave when we were building the app was, I have a Citibank credit card and a Capital One credit card. And Capital One, when I go and I use it at the grocery store, within a second, I got a push notification saying, you bought this at Ralph's. Citibank, it's 15 minutes later. That's not acceptable in this experience. We've got to get that data to real time and making the decisions to support our patients. And so we put a lot of thought into sort of how do we get that? How do we build the queuing mechanisms to support that? How do we build the long-term storage to support that and report on it? And then how do we arm our customer service team as well as our patients, members, and our management team with that data in real time?
Very cool. Okay, so I want to touch on the Vynyl partnership now. So we've been working with you guys for, I think, a few years at this point. I know you've worked with a lot of technology and innovation partners over the years. In your mind, what differentiates Vynyl?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've worked with organizations of sort of all dimensions and size, from your Accentures of the world to Tata to two guys in a garage next door to my house, literally. And in this domain in particular, in the healthcare space, I'd argue the most important, or one of the most important things, is an understanding of the industry. I wouldn't say the same things for many of the other industries I've worked in, but with healthcare, there's so many acronyms, there's so many illogical ways on how things are run, and illogical sort of processes and how people are paid, that if you don't know those dynamics, if you don't know the three-letter acronyms, and if you don't know all of these providers, it's really hard to sort of navigate. So I sort of joke that if your response to an RFP or something along those lines spells HIPAA with two Ps, you're probably not the right provider for us. And you'd be surprised how often that actually happens. So sort of domain knowledge, I'd say, is the first thing. The second thing, when I select vendors, especially sort of in this earlier stage, really high-moving, high-dynamic environment, is around size. And so that's not a perfect proxy, but it gives you a sort of indication on flexibility. It gives you an indication on quality, right? So as you get bigger into the agency model, my experience is you lose some quality as you grow at certain levels. And at the same time, you need specificity. So meaning you need to have like DevOps people, you need to have machine learning people, you need all these different disciplines. So it's hard to be too small. And my experience is it's hard to be too big. And so how do you find someone sort of in the middle is the second thing I would say. And then the third thing I would say is most agencies that I've worked with are either engineering first or product first. And you can usually tell if you look at the founding team members, like, did they come from an engineering background or did they come from a product creative background? And so for these solutions to work in this market, you need a combination of both. And so oftentimes that means I hire an engineering first firm and I'll augment them with a creative or UX or product firm, or vice versa. In this particular case, we've been able to manage and leverage the realities of both. That's been much more efficient for my team to manage.
Very cool. So maybe we can close here. What's next for Rescription?
Yeah, so for Rescription, we're really focused on expansion. So we sort of deploy market by market, and so we're in certain geographic markets today in the U.S. And so we're trying to expand to additional markets and then increase the volume. But the sales cycle has been pretty straightforward on the client side because of that savings and the savings that we're guaranteeing.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We are going to hang out here if you want to chat about either Rescription or Vynyl or both. We've got a booth, I think 2230. We're giving away free vinyl records if you're in the market. So thanks for hanging out.